The door to Kael's war chamber was a hefty slab of black-stained oak, reinforced with iron at the corners. When it swung open, Evren braced himself for a scene filled with fire and steel. Instead, he was met with something much more subdued. A lofty ceiling loomed above, and the walls were adorned with ancient maps. There were no guards, no council members, just a long table in the middle, cluttered with parchment and glass weights. Tall brass holders flickered with candlelight, and the air was thick with the familiar scents of ink, wax, and steel. Like the remnants of a long-held tension, Kael stood at the far end, his coat unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, hands resting flat on the table. He didn't glance up as Evren stepped inside. Evren shut the door behind him. "Strange time for a meeting," he remarked. "This isn't a meeting," Kael replied. Evren moved closer, his eyes scanning the documents spread out before him. Patterns of movement, border reports, intercepts. Some names were familiar, others unfamiliar. Then he spotted it just beside Kael's left hand. A vial, small, stoppered, and nearly empty. Evren's jaw tightened. Finally, Kael looked up. "I'm aware," he said, his tone steady. Evren didn't hold back. "How long has it been since the second time?" Evren let out a short, amused breath. "And you still drank it?" Kael nodded. "Every single time." A heavy silence settled between them. "Why call me here now?" Evren asked. Kael gestured to the carafe on the table, pouring 2 glasses of wine. The same wine. He slid one across the polished surface. Evren remained still. "You think this means something," he said. "I know it does," Kael countered. Evren didn't take a seat. He reached for the glass but didn't drink. Kael leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You had the poison. You had the knife, and you chose not to use either." Evren met his gaze. "Maybe I'm just waiting for a better moment." Kael didn't smile. He didn't. The wax seal cracked with a quiet, dry sound. Evren unfolded the parchment slowly. His fingers didn't shake, but the tension in them changed, tighter, as if bracing for impact. The script was formal, elegant, familiar. "To His Imperial Grace, Kael Dareth of Kaelarun," the letter went on. Evren read it once, then again. The first name signed at the bottom was Lord Corvin Aurelian, his uncle, the one who'd vanished just before the siege. "Should you take Varelia's capital with minimal bloodshed, I will ensure the inner guard does not interfere with your advance. In exchange, I ask for governorship of the new province and leniency for my sons." The room had lost its feel of a war chamber. Now, it felt more like a tomb. Evren found himself staring at the folded letter, but he wasn't really reading it anymore. Instead, he was haunted by everything it had taken from him. He could see his father, bleeding out on the steps of the palace temple. He could picture the gates swinging open far too quickly. He remembered the guards who had turned their backs, and now he understood why. His jaw tightened and his breath became heavy in his chest. Kael hadn't said a word in what felt like ages. He wasn't pacing or pressing Evren. He simply stood a short distance away, watching without malice, without any sense of satisfaction. Evren found himself wishing Kael would gloat. It would make it so much easier to hate him, but Kael just waited. And in that silence, Evren felt something inside him fracture. It wasn't grief. Not exactly. It wasn't betrayal. He had lived with that for far too long. It was something deeper, the death of belief. He glanced down at his own hands, the blood that coursed through them, the name he carried, Prince of Nothing. He rose slowly, each movement deliberate and quiet. He didn't look at Kael. Instead, he asked flatly, "How long have you known?" Kael's response came just as softly, "Since before the siege ended." Evren let out a short, humorless breath. "And you waited until now?" Kael nodded. "You weren't ready to see it." Evren's mouth twisted into something resembling a smile, but it lacked any humor. It was the last mask beginning to crack. Beneath that mask, another signature, and another. 7 names in total, all nobles of Varelia, all once seated at Evren's father's table, all now revealed as traitors. Evren remained silent. He didn't move. Kael didn't say anything either. There was no need. Everything Evren had fought for, his hunger, his bitterness, his long game of quiet vengeance, it all boiled down to this harsh truth. The walls hadn't crumbled from the outside. They had been opened from within. Evren's eyes scanned the last line once more. The prince will not resist. He is too young, too idealistic. He believes too much in loyalty. The words twisted in his gut. He folded the letter once, then twice, and finally set it down. Yet he remained silent. The rage inside him was too intense for words. Kael observed him with a stillness that Evren had never witnessed before. It wasn't cold or cruel, just a quiet anticipation for what would happen next. The hearth in the corner of the war chamber crackled gently, flames dancing low over coals that had mostly turned to embers. Evren approached it slowly, still clutching the folded letters in his hand. Kael remained still, not stopping him. Evren gazed into the fire for a moment, just long enough to feel the warmth on his face and the sweat beading on his brow. Then he let the papers fall into the flames. They ignited quickly. The seal curled, the edges turned black, and the words turned to ash. He didn't look away until all that remained was smoke. "Why now?" he asked, his voice soft. Not weak, just weary of the armor he wore. Kael stepped closer, halting behind him. "Because I don't want your mask," he replied. "I want you." Evren turned around, slowly. He met Kael's gaze, and this time, he wasn't hiding behind his usual calm demeanor, the sharp smile, or the princely silence. He simply looked. What remained was everything that had yet to be named. Kael didn't say anything more. He didn't have to. And Evren, at last, completely allowed himself to be seen.